Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. My name is Sarah from Mauve & Rose Needlecraft and this is my week 3 update for World's Peace Angel by Lavender and Lace. I'm going to insert a photograph here of where we finished last week. So week 2 was all about finishing the purple section of the dress and then doing that kind of gold colour sash that's kind of going around her arms. And I had said that in week 3 I wanted to focus on the blue sections, so the blue section at the top of her sleeve and the blue section at the bottom of the purple piece that we'd already done. But I also said that I wasn't going to have a huge amount of time stitching in week 3 because I was away for a few days and then I just had other things to do. However, I did manage, I hope you can see this, I did manage to get those 2 blue sections completed. And yeah, really enjoyed stitching the blue. I just love, I think I've said this before, I love kind of focusing on different coloured sections and then being finished with that and moving on to another section because, well, 1, it kind of keeps you interested, and 2, it does feel like a little kind of completion every time you finish one of those sections. One thing I have noticed about the blue section, like the purple section, is there is a lot of empty stitches being left, and these stitches are being left for the metallic thread. They're all going to be filled in later on with petite treasure braid, but I am starting to think that there's probably a lot more treasure braid in this piece than maybe I had anticipated, and I don't know if the treasure braid I have is going to be enough. I think there's 3 colours of treasure braid called for. I think I have about 2 of each, 2 cards of each treasure braid. I don't think it's going to be enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch the piece as normal. I always do my speciality threads at the end. So when I get to the end of the normal stitching and start on the metallic, I'm just going to fill in as much as I can with what I have. And then if I need to order more, I can order more at that point. I think if I were to order more now, it possibly wouldn't be the best idea because I could end up either vastly overestimating the amount I need or underestimating the amount I need and then having to try and get more. So I think what I'm going to do is do that, and then I'll kind of be able to gauge a little bit better the amount that I'll need to add on to what I already have, if that makes sense. But I am really enjoying the piece. Like I said, having the different coloured sections is lots of fun, and like I said, you know, you get a little bit of completion every time you finish a section. And for this coming week, I think I'm going to have a little bit more time to stitch, I think. And I would like to stitch the kind of cream section that's going over her knees, so this kind of crisscross cream section. Again, there is a lot of metallic called for in that section, but there's also a lot of DMC, so I'll be able to get the DMC portion done. And then there's like a little red ribbon kind of poking out the side, and I would like to get that bit done. And then there's another red bit kind of towards the section. I think it's around here somewhere around here. There's another kind of red ribbon, and I'd like to get that done. So maybe that's a bit ambitious, but we'll see how we get on. And I'll come back probably next Sunday. I think it's better to do the updates on a Sunday. Today's Monday, but I finished stitching on a Sunday because I had started, I think, on a Wednesday. So I was trying to do Wednesday to Wednesday, and then it just kept getting pushed, and I have more time to finish off the piece on a Sunday. So yes, I hope that's okay. And that is my plan for this coming week. And then on to what I have been listening to for this week. So I did finish Rosamunder Pilcher's Winter Solstice. It was beautiful, gorgeous book, like I said. And then in terms of what I've moved on to, I'm actually reading a non-fiction, or listening, I should say, to a non-fiction. And it is a book called 1914 by Paul Ham. Paul Ham is a wonderful Australian historian. Some of you may have heard of him. He's quite well known. He wrote a tremendous piece of work on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which is called Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it focuses, of course, on the bombing of those two cities, but he really, really goes very in depth into all the steps that led up to that, the people who were in favour of it, the people who were against it, including some quite well-respected physicists at the time. He talks about, all the big political leaders, whether that be FDR or Truman, or Hirohito or Stalin or Churchill or whoever. He talks about Oppenheimer, of course. And then he talks a bit about the days of the bombings and the days following the bombings. And then he actually goes back years later to talk to people who would have been children at the time and who were injured and unfortunately in many cases quite severely disfigured. And he visits them in kind of an old people's home in Japan and talks to them about how their lives turned out. And it's a fabulous book. It's very heavy, and obviously it's very sad, but it's really, really a wonderfully and tremendous, well-balanced account, I feel, of that event. I've also read a book of his on Passchendaele, which again was beautifully written, very in-depth, very well balanced. He seems to focus quite a lot on the human experience. A lot of historians and kind of military historians in particular, when it comes to battles, they will focus a lot on the kind of strategy and all of the weapons that were being used and the casualty lists kind of in terms of numbers. Paul Ham seems to focus very much on the human experience, and he gives a lot of time to diary entries, letters home, these kind of things to really give a voice to the people who were on the ground at the time. And I think that's the mark of a really good historian, in my opinion. And then this one that I'm reading is, like I said, called 1914, and it is Paul Ham's attempt to answer the question that I think plagues so many students of history, probably so many professional historians, and that question is, what led to the First World War? How, in 1914, did Europe become engulfed in this conflagration that took so many lives and caused so much devastation? And how did it happen? And I think it's one of those things that it's almost impossible to give a straight answer to, isn't it? There is no answer to that question, I don't feel, at least not a concise answer. I think in school we're taught that, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo, and that caused the First World War. Well, of course, that's not really how it happened. A lot of things had taken place before we got to that point. And that's what Paul Ham is really trying to look at in this book. I haven't got that far into it. I'm about chapter 6, I think. And what he seems to be doing so far is he seems to be focusing on the players and the political leaders and kind of going back into their life and trying to figure out what were the events in their life and the influences in their life that ended up causing them to make the decisions that they made, which then perhaps eventually led to the outbreak of war. So, for example, he has a chapter on Kaiser Wilhelm, and he even looks at his birth. Kaiser Wilhelm was the eldest son of Queen Victoria's daughter Vicky and her husband, and when he was born it all went a bit wrong and he was deprived of oxygen as a baby, and his arm was very badly injured during his birth, and so he ended up with this kind of withered, deformed arm, unfortunately, and they say that affected his behaviour quite a lot. And also the fact that he was deprived of oxygen, they often wonder, did that affect his behaviour, which in later years was described as being a little bit irrational, and did that cause him to make the decisions that he made that led to the outbreak of war? And the same with there's a chapter on Bettmann Hollweg, for example, the German Chancellor, and then there's a chapter on I think there's going to be chapters on other people. So it's a really interesting way of doing it, and it's a big task to undertake, I think, as a historian. But so far it's really, really interesting, and I am really enjoying it. I probably will also start another fiction book. I don't know if it'll be another Rosamunder Pilcher straight away. I do have an Agatha Christie that I started and then just put down. So I might either read that with my eyes or listen to that as an audiobook. The Agatha Christie's are on Spotify. If you didn't know, you can get them on Spotify and listen to, if you have a Spotify account, and listen to them there. So I might do that, or I might listen to another Rosamunder Pilcher, or I might just pick another audiobook to listen to when I'm stitching. And yeah, that's all I have to say for this week. I hope you're all well. I hope you all have lots of lovely stitching. It's starting to cool down a lot here. You can really kind of feel the first bit of autumn in the air, which makes me very happy because I am absolutely an autumn person, and I'm always looking forward to autumn, as I think a lot of people are. So that's all for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I will see you next week.